Mark Gay is Newcastle's primary target, and Eddie Howe is refusing to be drawn on their pursuit of the man who was brilliant at the Euros for England. Liverpool are still seeking that first big summer signing as well, but new boss Arne Slot might just have a European champion in mind. Hi there, welcome along to our hour-long transfer show. It's now 8 days until the Premier League kicks off and 22 days until the transfer window shuts. So who is heading where and how will the deals be done? We'll take you through it all. Dominic Solanke had a brilliant season at Bournemouth. Tottenham are keen to bring in firepower. We are assessing their chances of getting him to North London. For Manchester United, the focus is on midfield. We'll hear from Erik ten Hag as he tries to reshape his squad under the club's new football setup. After spending his whole career at Chelsea, Conor Gallagher is about to become an Atletico Madrid player. The latest on his move is on the way. And is it time for a Premier League homecoming for Wilfried Zaha? Stand by for news on him. It's all on the way in an absolutely packed show between now and 8. Welcome along. Well, we have Dom Sheth and we have Michael Bridge here alongside me. And, guys, we're going to start off with Newcastle. We'll hear from you both in just a moment. But before we do, let's hear from Eddie Howe on how their transfer business has gone so far this summer. Here he is.
My phone's not been as busy as I want it to be. No, I think it's always the way during pre-season. It's a very busy time for the staff. I mean, the trip to Japan was as intense as I experienced. And we're just working to try and build the best squad possible to give us the best chance of long-term success, trying to make the right decisions. And there's a lot of critical decisions to make. But I'm really pleased so far. When I look at the squad with the majority of the players fit, we look really, really strong. We've got a couple of players to get back into the group. Callum and Matt Targett are the closest to. They would make a big difference. And then, of course, we've got the longer-term ones behind them. But once everyone's fit, we've got a really competitive squad.
Widespread reports over the last few days that you're attempting to sign Mark Gahey from Crystal Palace. Are you able to give us at this stage any update of any potential transfer?
I'm able to give you nothing, Keith, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, admittedly, Keith was doing his best there to try and get an answer out of Eddie Howe, but he's not biting, is he, on Mark Gahey and the potential of bringing him to St James's Park, Michael. What do we think was going on here? Read between the lines.
I think it's clear that there's interest. The talks are ongoing, that a bid was rejected, and there's a valuation that Crystal Palace have, and there's probably a valuation of what Newcastle want to pay. There's an understanding that he's potentially open to a move. He's only just returned after doing so well for England at the European Championships, and I think that's what we're going to see with a lot of clubs and transfers, players only just returning, things always a bit later. It's an interesting one because he's done so well for Crystal Palace, and of course they'd love to keep him. However, he does have 2 years left on his contract, and that's where I feel there probably will be further talks, and talks are ongoing. But of course, Eddie Howe has a sporting director in Paul Mitchell, and the Crystal Palace sporting director, of course, is Dougie Freedman, and Dougie Freedman and Crystal Palace have to be applauded for their recruitment. Mark Gahey was signed from Crystal Palace. They've signed Ebi Eze from the Championship, and they signed Michael Olise from the Championship. They make good signings. They make signings where some clubs sometimes say might be a bit of a risk. Mark Gahey has been fantastic for Crystal Palace, and he'd go on to be probably a captain there and a real leader. So I think this one is a wait and see, and I can imagine further developments over the coming days.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, signing a player is one thing, but keeping them is a different skill, if you're a sporting director. And I suppose also another part of this is just the notion of who is helping Eddie Howe add to his squad, and it's different people now compared to the setup that was there before, and that's often a factor too. Let's talk about another player, a Newcastle player, in Kieran Trippier, and where is his future like to be decided?
Yeah, in that news conference, Eddie Howe was asked about Kieran Trippier and was asked about his future, whether he was going to be staying at Newcastle United. Eddie Howe said, look, Kieran Trippier is vital to our squad. He's an important member of that squad, but he stopped short of saying that he's guaranteed to be here come the end of the transfer window, simply because he says, look, we're living in an age where we have profit and sustainability rules. We've got financial issues that we have to abide by and comply with. And with all of that in mind, where we understand that West Ham United are just keeping an eye on Kieran Trippier's situation at Newcastle, it's while they're working on a deal with Manchester United to sign Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Trippier, though, we do know has entered the final year of his contract. So it's got to that point where if he is going to leave, this is going to be the last window, effectively, where they can get really good money for him if they can sell someone like Kieran Trippier. Of course, they could do that in January as well, but then he'll be running down his contract to within 6 months of it ending. With regard to Wan-Bissaka, there's still a cautious optimism from West Ham United that they can strike a deal, but there's still work to do on this deal. We've been talking about it being close for a long while, and that a lot of the details have been agreed already. So the fee is more or less there. There's still a little bit of work to do on that, and the structure of the fee as well. There's still a little bit of work to do there, but it seems that one of the big sticking points at the moment is Aaron Wan-Bissaka's exit terms from Manchester United were he to leave the club, because as per his contract, he's entered the final year. I don't think he's actually asked to leave Manchester United. Manchester United are negotiating with another club to sell Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So there will be something in his contract, you would imagine, whereby he would be due some money. So while they're trying to sort that out, we're still going to say it's close, but not agreed.
Yeah.
That's why West Ham United will look at other options.
And it's one of those things, I think it's one of the trends we're seeing in this transfer window particularly, aren't we, Domish, that clubs advance things to a point, and then maybe you wait to get that final step done, and that's when that domino falls, and then you see that pattern repeat. And it seems maybe also that this is part of how a club like Manchester United are now doing their business, advancing to a certain point with a number of different options, and then once they can, push things forward, they do. But on their terms, I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Okay, all right. Well, we'll just take a break from West Ham and Aaron Wan-Bissaka and everything like that for the moment. And it's a new era for Liverpool. Of course, they've got a new manager in Arne Slot, but still no major first-team signings, and we've got just over a week to go until the new season starts. Let's speak to Vinny O'Connor, who is at Anfield for us. Hi there, Vinny. So, yeah, as you mentioned, still no business for Liverpool this summer. Deafeningly quiet. However, is that about to change? Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad, what do we know?
Well, I think I was expecting Liverpool to do a little bit of business. I wasn't expecting masses of business during this summer, but it is a bit of a surprise that they haven't brought anyone in just yet. And when it comes to saying, is it about to happen now with Martin Zubimendi? Well, to a certain extent, I suppose you could say yes, because we know of Liverpool. We know that Liverpool are interested in him. They want to bring him to the football club. But in terms of a deal being imminent, you get the impression that that's not the case at the moment, mainly because of what's coming out of Sociedad at the moment, because Zubimendi trained as normal today. He's been named in the squad for a friendly with Union Berlin tomorrow as well. I suppose if we were to be pulled out of that at the last minute, it might give an indication that things are moved on. But certainly the impression that we're getting from within Liverpool at the moment as well is that any chance of a deal hasn't moved on from what we brought you yesterday, and that was that Liverpool were trying to sign someone like Martin Zubimendi. So in terms of what happens next, well, of course, we know that Zubimendi has a release clause of €60 million, which is worth around £51.5 million as well. Liverpool probably sensibly would try and negotiate a fee a little bit lower than that. I don't think it'd be necessarily too much of a problem for them to meet that release clause, but obviously, as I say, it would make sense for them to try and negotiate something lower. As yet then, a deal has not been struck. We know of interest as well from the likes of Arsenal, from the likes of Manchester United as well. So yes, Liverpool want to bring Martin Zubimendi to the football club, but in terms of it being close, it's not quite there yet.
Arne Slot says that the bar is high for any Liverpool signing because of the standard of player that he already has at the club, Vinny. But do you expect further targets to be pursued in the final 3 weeks of the window, or do you think it'll be a little bit more watchful?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. Richard Hughes said when he had that news conference with Arne Slot, the first news conference that Arne Slot took as the Liverpool manager, that he expected the transfer window to be quiet in July and then reach a crescendo for all of us in August. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a crescendo for Liverpool. As I said, I wasn't expecting masses of business, and that's mainly because when you look at that Liverpool squad at the moment, there are massive glaring holes within it. You could argue that they could potentially need to bring in another centre-half with Virgil van Dijk at the age of 33, Joel Matip having left the club as well, of course. You could argue that maybe it would be worth strengthening at fullback, and clearly Arne Slot wants to bring in, and it makes sense to bring in a holding midfielder. And in terms of that, the reason that Arne Slot is looking to address that area is because he wants a more all-round player, despite the job that Endo did for Liverpool last season. So that's where Zubimendi fits the bill, because obviously we know of his quality. You look at what he did in that second half against England in the final of the Euros, for instance. I mean, I think people were expecting Spain to fade away when he replaced Rodri, but far from it, and Spain obviously went on to win the game. We know he's got an eye for a pass as well, in much the same way as Xabi Alonso, who came through the Real Sociedad youth system as well, joining Liverpool back in 2004. And he can score the odd goal as well. It was 5 goals in 31 La Liga appearances. So again, that shows you the kind of quality that he possesses, and that's where Arne Slot is coming from when he says that any new signing coming in is going to have to raise the bar. Also have to emphasise, of course, that if they can't do a deal for Zubimendi, then Liverpool have other targets in mind. But again, they'll be of a high bar as well.
A little word on Joe Gomez, Vinny. He's back from his post-Euros break, linked with Newcastle earlier this summer. Questions still remain over his future?
Well, to a certain extent, I suppose, but at the same time, the message that I got from Liverpool today was that it would take something big for us to let Joe Gomez go. And that interest from Newcastle was all, of course, tied in with a potential deal for Anthony Gordon. We know that Liverpool like Anthony Gordon, although they haven't revisited that since then. Newcastle, in the end, I suppose, they wanted to take Jarell Quansah. Liverpool went up for that. They were, at that point, willing to let Joe Gomez go as part of a deal for Anthony Gordon. But since then, of course, nothing has materialised. And Joe Gomez himself has posted on social media, back in training, and that he's looking forward to his 10th season here as a Liverpool player since that move from Charlton. So at the moment, it looks like Joe Gomez is very much going to be a part of things, and Liverpool will need his versatility throughout the season as well, able to fill in at centre-half, at right-back, at left-back. He played in central midfield at times last season as well. There are potential other outgoings, other speculation, I suppose, around certain players at Liverpool. Fabio Carvalho comes into that category, and so far no real movement as it stands, but Liverpool certainly expecting bids to come in from the likes of Leicester, from Southampton, who've already had a £15 million bid rejected, and then the Sepp van den Berg as well. Liverpool value him at around £20 million. Mainz would like to take him back. I know there's been interest from PSV as well, so there is potential outgoings, I suppose, from Liverpool, be it certainly someone like Fabio Carvalho, they rate very, very highly indeed, and maybe less likely that he would go than someone like Sepp van den Berg, but also Liverpool still needing that extra cover at centre-half. Van den Berg himself, I think, would like more than to be just a backup. He would want more regular first-team football. So there's a few things that need sorting out between that now and that transfer deadline.
And Vinny, it's always, I suppose, a slightly nervous time for the fan base when they know some of their key players are into the final year of their contracts. And that applies to Virgil van Dijk, that applies to Trent Alexander-Arnold. How are Liverpool managing that situation at present?
Yeah, don't forget Mo Salah as well. So that's 3 of them in the final year of the contract as well. And I suppose the state of play for Liverpool is simple. Get them to commit beyond next summer or lose them for nothing. When Arne Slot took his place at that first news conference that I mentioned earlier, alongside Director of Football, or Sporting Director Richard Hughes himself reaffirmed the players' commitment for this season moving forward as well. Indeed, he said he was convinced that they're committed wholly for the season. Of course, since then as well, it's been stated that they weren't drawn, to be fair, as regards negotiations, how negotiations were going on those contracts, because he says it's a private matter between player and the club as well. Of course, when it comes to what's happening, Mo Salah was back earlier than Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who were away at the Euros as well. I think there's an expectation that Trent Alexander-Arnold will succeed Virgil van Dijk as the Liverpool captain at some point when that needs to be passed on. So maybe that gives an indication as to the expectation as to what will happen with Trent Alexander-Arnold's future. Van Dijk admitted this summer would be one of reflection, both club and at international level, as well as regards his next direction. The difference, I suppose, with Van Dijk and Mo Salah is that they are 33 and 32 respectively. So coming up with a deal that suits both club and players in the short and long term isn't necessarily that easy as well. Slot. All right, mate. Thanks very much for joining us. All right. Slot wants to keep them. Obviously, at this stage, Van Dijk certainly needs to be a big part of that Liverpool Liverpool back line. Similarly, it wouldn't make sense necessarily to let Salah go, given the numbers that, again, he racked up last season. On top of that, of course, you know, they're part of the Liverpool leadership group as well. And Liverpool have shown it in the past that they're not averse to keeping players, allowing them to run down their contract when they need them, and then letting them go. I mean, it happened with Gini Wijnaldum, for instance, as well. I think the preference would have been for them to get those new deals sorted before they went into the last 12 months of their contract. The preference now is clearly to get a deal done as quickly as possible, so they're not open to players talking to other clubs talking to them, as can happen in January, for instance, with 6 months remaining on those deals. So, as I say, plenty to sort out at Liverpool during this summer, during this transfer window, but still negotiations as regards those three players and committing their future beyond next summer is a key element as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Vinny. Kept his focus, wasn't in any way distracted by that canine in the background. Brilliant work. Now, Manchester United have been linked with a whole host of midfielders this summer, including Monaco's Youssouf Fofana. We'll have the latest on their targets after the break here on The Transfer Show. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. We were hearing earlier on from Vinny O'Connor about a quiet window so far at Liverpool. Also pretty much the case at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Let's talk Spurs then. Michael, Harry Kane sold last summer to Bayern Munich. Ange Postecoglou, is he starting to feel that little bit of desperation about the striker situation?
I mean, he certainly admitted that Spurs are light in that area, and he said that to Spurs-based journalists in South Korea last week. There's a press conference tomorrow. I'm sure he'll be talking transfers. But Harry Kane and Eric Dyer return to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday as Bayern Munich go there. They're going to receive commemorative gifts from Ledley King as a well done for all their service to the club. So Harry Kane's going to be on that Tottenham Hotspur pitch before his replacement. But look, Spurs played a sort of a different style. You like that? Yeah. Spurs played a different style last season, and Heung-min Son was fantastic last season. He had a brilliant season. But Spurs do look a bit light there. But look, they're in the market for a striker. I think ideally an English striker. And that striker we know who they're interested in is Dominic Solanke. If we have a look at Dominic Solanke last season, very, very impressive stats. And I want to compare him. Let's compare him to Tottenham strikers last season.
Wow, magic.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, my God.
I don't know. Don't, honestly.
Did you do that?
No, don't, honestly. Those stats are very good. 19 goals. And he'll obviously feel a bit aggrieved that he didn't make the European Championship squad.
Yeah.
But is he maybe thinking, do I get another opportunity at a so-called top six club? Obviously, he started at Chelsea, then Liverpool. But he's had 5 or 6 seasons at Bournemouth now, and he's done ever so well. But last season was the key, wasn't it? Richarlison there, who I'm going to go on to in a minute. Timo Werner, of course, 2 goals in 13. A very nominal loan. He's returned, but he'll play predominantly on the left.
Yeah.
Spurs fans saying to me, well, Timo Werner's not going to start, is he, Mike? And I say back to them, the Europa League. There's more games next season, so they're going to need a big squad. So it'll be interesting to hear from Ange Postecoglou tomorrow, but I'm sure he's going to say to the reporters in there that they are after a forward/striker, and he's not panicking yet, because Ange Postecoglou doesn't panic.
No, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who panics. OK, but in terms of the business that has happened so far, Michael, I mean, we've had Archie Gray come in from Leeds, and they moved on Pierre-Emile Højbjerg as well. So where does the squad reshape under Postecoglou go next, do you think?
I still think they're in the market for an energetic midfielder. They like Jacob Ramsey of Villa. Well, he scored for Villa yesterday, and I think Villa are very keen to keep him. There was always interest in Conor Gallagher, but the rivalry between Spurs and Chelsea made that difficult. And, of course, there's probably a Gallagher/rivalry Premier League tax with Tottenham, whereas Atletico Madrid are paying around £33 million. I think there might be some business in the fullback areas if Emerson Royal was to move on over the next few weeks. AC Milan would like to sign him. But the interesting one for me is Richarlison, because he has had interest from Saudi Arabia, but he's spoken to Brazilian media today just saying how much he wants to stay, how much he loves it. Look, and he says money isn't everything, And if we remember, Richarlison last season opened up brilliantly about his mental health struggles and how hard it was for him after the World Cup, his injury issues. But he did actually really well when he was fit last season. The problem is when. If Richarlison can stay fit, then he'll be a real asset for Spurs next season. If Spurs fans asking us, David, about to get tweets in, does Richarlison staying mean Tottenham don't sign a striker? No. It will be Richarlison and another striker. Whether it means a striker and a forward in the wide areas, we'll wait and see. But I know Spurs fans are getting a little bit impatient, but as I say, David, I've said on here all week, I'd say 18, 19 Premier League clubs are still looking to do plenty of business.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've still got 8 days till the Premier League starts and 22 days until the transfer window closes. OK, let's move on to Manchester United. And they face their local rivals, Manchester City, in the Community Shield on Saturday. They brought in Lenny Yoro. They've brought in Joshua Zirkzee. Well, Erik ten Hag says the club are still looking to do business this summer. However, he says the nature of the market means that deals are slow to get over the line.
When we have news, we will announce it now. But you see in the market, it is quite quiet still. But we have done our business. We have done 2 deals, and but yeah, it's about timings, and it's about the market options, and it's about in the right moment do the right things.
In the last few days, particularly, you've been heavily linked with a central midfielder. Have you been able to identify the player that you'd want to try and recruit in an ideal world in that position?
I don't go into details where we are now in recruitment and where we are working on, of course. we know what we're doing. I think we are in a good position with the squad, and yeah, just for you, just wait, patience, and in the right moment, we will tell you.
Patience in the right moment. It goes to what we were saying before about, advancing deals to a point, but then that final step's the crucial one. Lots to go at here with Manchester United, Dharmesh. The midfield, clearly a critical area. So where do things stand on potential arrivals, first of all?
Yeah, it's definitely an area that they want to strengthen in this transfer window, and the search for a midfielder has taken them to Burnley, believe it or not. And this has surprised a few people, but Manchester United, we're told, have held initial discussions with Burnley over their midfielder, Sander Berge. Now, they're just exploring the conditions of a potential deal, how much it would cost, what the personal terms would look like. It's understood Berge would want to make that move to Old Trafford. He's still got 3 years left on his contract, so Burnley could probably command quite a big transfer fee for him. Dialogue also remains open with Monaco over the signing of Youssouf Fofana. This one, though, is slightly more interesting because he's only got a year left on his contract. So there's a feeling that because Monaco may not be able to tie him down to a new deal, they might need to sell now, and Manchester United might see that there's a deal to be done in that. AC Milan had been really interested earlier on in this transfer window. It looks like that their interest has cooled a little bit because they couldn't agree a fee with Monaco. There's interest in a whole host of other midfielders as well. We do know about Paris Saint-Germain's Manuel Ugarte. It's been a long-standing interest during this transfer window, but that interest has cooled because of the gap in valuation between what Manchester United are prepared to pay and what PSG wants. Now, they actually signed Ugarte from Sporting Lisbon last summer for around £50 million. They want to make a profit on that. But Manchester United will look at it and think, well, you've just signed João Neves from Benfica for around £50 million. You're going to play him. So it's going to limit the game time that Manuel Ugarte has got. So why would we pay you your asking price? So I think they're just keeping that one in the background. And if Paris Saint-Germain do reduce their asking price, then maybe United will go back to the negotiating table. Another player that they've looked at is Richard Rios of Palmeiras. But again, his fee could be quite prohibitive to what Manchester United want to do just now. And another option, which would probably be the one that would require the least amount of money, is Fiorentina's Sofian Amrabat. That name is still there. He was on loan at United last season. United had a €20 million option to buy Sofian Amrabat. They didn't take Fiorentina up on that option, so he went back to Fiorentina, but they're still continuing talks with the club to try and negotiate down on that option fee. So plenty happening, and in keeping with what United are trying to do in the transfer window, they're trying to get down the line with as many targets as possible. So if there was a departure or if they want to press play on one of these deals, it won't take them that long to maybe complete that deal.
You make a really good point there, Dharmesh, about the time element, especially as we get towards the last 3 weeks of the window, and how the time element and the critical nature of it can then affect the numbers that are involved too. And of course, there's also, PSR and other related issues. Do United need to sell to bring someone in?
I've been saying throughout the window that, it's almost like a one-in, one-out policy depending on what the position is. In an ideal scenario, while it's not essential, United would want to create squad space and budgets to bring in a player. I don't think it's essential that they do that, because if there's a deal that they simply have to do and they cannot turn down, and if they haven't freed up the squad space, then they might just take that calculated risk of keeping all of the players that maybe they would want to sell, and then come June the 30th, before June the 30th next year, try and get some money back into the club before that PSR deadline. But as it stands, we've got two names that won't go away, Scott McTominay and Casemiro. Fulham have made two bids for McTominay, £17 million and £20 million. Both have been rejected. As it stands, they're not expected to go back in because the gap in valuation is too big. They're focusing on other targets. I always say never in a transfer window, though, because the later you go in the window, if United reduce their price, would Fulham be tempted to come back to the negotiating table? Galatasaray also interested in McTominay, but they've yet to get close to Manchester United's valuation. And Casemiro, Saudi Arabia interest earlier on in the window, that seems to have cooled. it looks like he's staying for now, and he's been captaining Manchester United during pre-season as well.
What about the centre-back situation at Old Trafford?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because we know that they've brought in Lenny Yoro. He's since got injured, unfortunately, for 3 months he's out for. I don't think that will be the reason that United would go into the market for another defender. But again, as I mentioned before, if they can create squad space, then maybe they will go back into the market. But then if there is a deal that they can't say no to, then maybe they will proceed. The name that doesn't go away is Matthijs de Ligt from Bayern Munich. Now, Bayern Munich, as yet, are not budging on their €50 million asking price. But Manchester United also know that Bayern Munich are trying to do a deal with Bayer Leverkusen for Jonathan Tah. But to bring in Jonathan Tah, they would probably have to sell Matthijs de Ligt. Now, Sky Germany are now reporting that Bayer Leverkusen have put a deadline of 11 o'clock UK time tonight for Bayern Munich to get that deal done. I've been speaking to people close to that deal, and they're claiming that that's not the case. Even if there is a deadline, if Bayern Munich suddenly go past this deadline in a week, pay what Bayer Leverkusen want, are you seriously telling me that Bayer Leverkusen aren't going to do business? It's a kind of game of brinkmanship because Bayer Leverkusen, in an ideal scenario, want to get their squad sorted as soon as they possibly can. So there's a lot of moving parts with regard to Matthijs de Ligt and Jonathan Tah, but United are clearly interested in trying to bring de Ligt into the club, but it would probably require a reduction in the asking price.
OK, all things United covered with Dharmesh Sheth. Michael Bridge is here with us too, and after the break we're focusing on Julian Alvarez and Manchester City, who's been at the centre of all the transfer business that's been going on at Atletico Madrid, who've been busy this summer. We're going to get a Spanish football expert's view on how these deals have come together after the break.
It's time for our Premier League transfer wrap. Dharmesh, take it away, please.
You're all right. Marseille retain an interest in Arsenal striker Eddie Nketiah and are deciding whether to go back in with an improved offer.
Reports in Europe are linking Aston Villa to final defender Lucio Getrauda. The fullback is also linked with RB Leipzig.
Breaking news around Bournemouth, they are in talks with Barcelona over a potential deal for right-back Julian Araujo.
He's back from international duty, but there's no formal offers yet for Brentford striker Ivan Toney.
Brighton remain in talks with Celtic for midfielder Matt O'Reilly and are also looking to add experienced Germany defender Matt Hummels.
Well, Chelsea have announced the signing of Aaron Alsmeno on a 7-year deal. He'll stay on loan at Boca Juniors for the rest of the year.
Crystal Palace have been linked with a loan deal for one of their greatest ever players, Wilfried Zaha, but we understand it could be a difficult deal to do with his current club Galatasaray.
Everton are one of a number of clubs interested in Manchester City midfielder Calvin Phillips.
Fulham in the market for a midfielder and maybe a centre-back as well after Tim Ream's departure.
Ipswich wants Sammy Szmodics from Blackburn, but there's still no agreement on a fee after weeks of talks.
Leicester are in talks with Brighton to sign Facundo Buonanotte. The discussions are over a loan deal.
Liverpool target Martin Zubimendi has been included in Real Sociedad's squad for tomorrow's friendly against Union Berlin.
Atletico Madrid are finalising a move for Manchester City forward Julian Alvarez for £82 million.
Manchester United have held initial discussions with Burnley over a deal for midfielder Sander Berge. He's one of a number of midfielders they're looking at.
Newcastle United have signed striker Will Osulu from Sheffield United in a deal worth £15 million.
Former Nottingham Forest defender Scott McKenna has joined Las Palmas. McKenna was a free agent after leaving Forest.
Southampton deciding whether to go back in with an improved offer for Liverpool forward Fabio Carvalho. A bid has already been rejected.
Tottenham forward Richarlison says he has no plans to leave the club and has revealed he's rejecting an offer from Saudi Arabia.
UAE club Shabab Al Ahly have agreed a deal with West Ham United for defender Kurt Zouma. He's expected to have a medical in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Now, reports in the Midlands have Wolves looking at Middlesbrough striker Emmanuel Lataylaith. The Wolves have got 4 players in early this summer, but it's been quiet there of late.
All right, now here on the Transfer Show, we like to cast our net beyond the UK and out to the continent. And with so much going on at Atletico Madrid and a host of Spain's Euro 2024 winners on the move, La Liga is the focal point of plenty of business. So let's get an expert take. Matt Clark, who is editor of La Liga Lowdown, joins us live right now. Hi there, Matt. Good evening to you. First port of call, Martin Zubimendi's been linked with Liverpool. We understand there is interest there. So what would he bring to their midfield and how does he compare to the options that Arne Slot already has in his midfield?
Well, Zubimendi's been an integral part of Real Sociedad's midfield for a number of years now. He's come through the academy there. And he's a defensive midfielder who is a great passer of the ball, has a lot of vision. Some people have compared him to Sergio Busquets as well. And, of course, he came on for Rodri at half-time in the final of the Euros. A lot of Spanish fans were quite worried. A lot of English fans were excited that Rodri was missing the second half. But as it was, Zubimendi played a fantastic second-half performance as Spain obviously went on to win the trophy. So I think he will be a fantastic addition to Liverpool if it happens. I'm still quite sceptical about that myself. But, he will be an ideal player to sit in that number 6 role. They haven't really replaced since Fabinho left.
And Mikel Merino, another one who could come to the Premier League with Arsenal. So how good a fit might that be? And what are Real Sociedad doing so right to earn these players the attention that they're getting, Matt?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to a strong academy. Zubieta there is a really productive academy. Mikel Merino didn't come through there, but he has been at the club for a number of years. He's from nearby Osasuna, Pamplona. But, Newcastle fans might remember him from his short stint there. He's also a midfielder that is more of a box-to-box. He offers more of a goal threat, as we saw in the semi-final of the Euros, scoring the winner against Germany. I think that looks like it's more likely to happen. Real Sociedad have already lost one of their centre-backs, Robin Lenormand, to Atletico. And if they were to lose Merino and Zubimendi, that's a real chunk of their spine that has been ripped out this summer. So if that was the case, they'd look to their academy again to fill that void. But Mikel Arteta shopping at his old club, that's an exciting signing for Arsenal fans for sure.
Yeah, the Basque clubs always do so well bringing through the young talents. But with those two, and also Dani Olmo joining Barcelona, Matt, if we just kind of widen the discussion, it looks like Spain's Euros triumph has really created the perfect kind of shop window mechanism for moves this summer.
It certainly has. There's always caution about buying players who have done well in the tournament and then doesn't always translate to the next league season. But I think in this case, the players you mentioned there are all quality. Dani Olmo, of course, coming back to Barcelona where he started his career as a youth player. He does have quite an injury record, which might concern Barca fans. But he has done fantastically well abroad. He's played for Leipzig for a few years now and spent some time in Croatia as a really young player. So he's certainly one that can adapt and fit in. Whether Barca really need him in that position is up for debate, but it's certainly one that looks like it's going to happen.
We've got this far in the chat, Matt, without mentioning Atletico Madrid. We've got to talk about them. And up to £82 million for Julian Alvarez. I mean, I don't know about you, but that looks like very good business for Manchester City. How is that potential move being considered in Spain?
Well, I think it's fantastic business for City. We know Erling Haaland is going to be the main man there, whatever happens. I think Alvarez has played fantastically well for them. And considering they only bought him for 14 million a couple of years ago, to sell him for up to 82 is incredible profit for them. Alvarez, of course, has won almost everything in the game, I think, apart from the Olympics, which he was competing in this summer. Still a very young player. I'm a really big fan of his, and I think Atletico Madrid is a great home for him, playing for Diego Simeone and the Argentine contingent already at the club. Griezmann already tweeted his excitement at the deal by posting like an emoji of a spider, which is his nickname in Argentina. And yeah, I think in Spain, the reaction has been one of real excitement because, I mean, obviously Real Madrid have dominated the last year and now with Mbappe arriving, there's been talk of, 10 years of dominance from Los Blancos. With Barca, we know their issues that they've had over the last couple of years. So to have a strong Atletico Madrid challenging is something that La Liga fans in general are really excited about and will hopefully make for a real battle at the top of the table.
Yeah, it's always fascinating, isn't it, when you get Atleti giving Real Madrid a bloody nose or more than that at times. And obviously they've upset the duopoly on a few occasions in the last couple of decades. Let's just talk a little bit about Atleti and their dealings with Chelsea at the moment. In fact, before we speak to you again on this, Matt, let's hear from Terry Gibson on Conor Gallagher's prospective transfer from Stamford Bridge to the Civitas Metropolitano.
I find it hard to see where Conor Gallagher was going to get into the team, despite them spending this money, because there are players at Atletico Madrid. Simeone doesn't leave out, ever, the three stalwarts that Simeone relies on. Always Rodrigo de Paul, always Koke. He won't leave those two out unless he sells one. He won't sell Koke. Rodrigo de Paul might be moved on. And Thomas Lemar is back fit as well. Personally, I can't see where Conor Gallagher is going to play for Atletico Madrid at the moment.
So it seems like he's going from being a squad player under Enzo Maresco at Chelsea to being a squad player under Diego Simeone at Atletico. What do you make of it, Matt?
Well, I certainly agree with Terry. There's a lot of midfielders at Atletico that certainly you would imagine higher up in Diego Simeone's thoughts before this window. The ones that Terry mentioned, as well as Pablo Barrios, who is a young player that the fans really like and has been given a few opportunities so far. And also Artur Vermeeren, a Belgian midfielder they brought in, I believe, in January. And he's also got a bright future ahead of him. So it'll be a real competition for places at the Metropolitano. And Gallagher will know that he's got to fight on to try and earn that spot. Although his attributes are perfect for a Diego Simeone side. So he does have that kind of in his favour. I guess it depends on how he gets on in training in the early games. And if he can hit the ground running, then he can stake a claim and keep his place.
Yeah, and we saw what Diego Simeone did to help Kieran Trippier when he joined Atletico Madrid as well. Matt, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but so thanks so much for speaking to us here on Sky Sports News, and we'll speak to you again very soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Now then, Manchester City's Calvin Phillips had struggled to break into Pep Guardiola's team since joining from Leeds. Is he on the move this summer? We'll have the latest on his future next. OK, about 5 minutes left of the show. Let's talk a few more teams. Arsenal looking to finally overhaul Manchester City the third time of trying. Exits, still work to do, Dharmesh?
Yeah, there is a bit, actually. We keep talking about these two players, Eddie Nketiah and Reiss Nelson. As far as Eddie Nketiah is concerned, we know that Marseille have gone in with 2 bids and they've both been rejected. They still retain an interest in Eddie Nketiah and are now deciding whether to go back in with an improved bid. Now, this gap in valuation, it's thought, is not insurmountable. So there is a little bit of leeway, I think, that Marseille could probably work with, especially because I think Eddie Nketiah's game time is going to be limited. His primary motivation is to get regular first-team football. Personal terms not expected to be a problem, and he seems to be open to the move. His manager, Mikel Arteta, was asked about his future yesterday. This was after Arsenal beat Bayer Leverkusen by 4-1. Nketiah came off the bench and played the last 19 minutes, and Arteta said there is nothing to discuss. He wouldn't say he's definitely staying. He wouldn't say he's definitely going. Nothing to discuss. Read into that what you will. Reiss Nelson, meanwhile, was the only outfield player not to play any minutes. We think he might have had a slight knock. That's why he wasn't involved. But he's also found game time hard to come by. He wants regular first-team football. Leicester City have held talks. There are a number of European clubs as well. As it stands, we think he wants to remain in the Premier League. OK. Michael, you're close to Crystal Palace. Can you tell Crystal Palace fans that Wilfried Zaha might be coming home?
I mean, one of the greatest players in Crystal Palace in history. There was once upon a time that they were pretty much a one-man team, and the stats will tell you that. You know, Palace lost every time Zaha wasn't there. Look, as much as he loves the football club, as much as the fans love him, my understanding is it would be a difficult deal to do, because obviously he went to Galatasaray on a free. Wages would be an issue, and Galatasaray would command a sizable loan fee. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but as it stands, I'd say unlikely. Yeah. But Oliver Glasner, who we will be speaking to next week, Palace fans, midweek, and I still think they're going to be pretty busy. OK. Where are we at with Calvin Phillips? Well, he's of interest to several Premier League clubs this summer. Of course, it was a difficult period for him on loan at West Ham. It didn't work out. But because there were so many players away on international duty, Copa America World Cup, he has featured for Manchester City in pre-season. But look, we know he doesn't really, it's unlikely he's got a future at City. We understand Galatasaray are not one of the clubs who are looking at him, but Everton potentially as well. Look, he's open-minded about his future, but there have been no developments yet, but there is Premier League interest. OK, and you mentioned he was on loan at West Ham. Kurt Zouma currently at West Ham, Dharmesh, but for much longer? Doesn't look like it's going to be for much longer. He's on the verge of leaving because West Ham United have agreed a deal with the UAE club Shabab Al Ahly. That's for the signing of Kurt Zouma. He's got 1 year left on his contract, and we don't think that the club based in Dubai can actually afford much of a transfer fee. So a mutual contract termination hasn't been ruled out. He's expected to have a medical in the next 24 to 48 hours. And as a result of that, West Ham United could yet bring in another central defender. They've already brought in Max Kilman, of course, in this summer's transfer window. They've looked at Jean-Claire Todibo, but it looks like he wants to go to Juventus. There's Umar Soulé from RB Salzburg. Trevor Chalobah, who looks like he's out of the reckoning at Chelsea. Fabrizio Bruno, who's at Flamengo. They thought they'd agreed a deal with him earlier in the window. That fell through. They might still be looking at that one once more. And Mats Hummels is a free agent, and there's a number of clubs who are looking at him. West Ham just having a little look at Mats Hummels as well. Former Manchester United goalkeeper David De Gea in talks with Fiorentina. Could join them for nothing. He's a free agent right now. About 30 seconds left. Michael, talk to us about Adam Eder. Could he be rejoining Celtic? Yes, good chance. They're in talks with Norwich City to re-sign Adam Eder. Of course, he was on loan last season. They've come in with an improved offer after Norwich rejected $4 million last month. He is keen on a return to Celtic. He had a good loan spell last season. So more on that as we get it. I'm sure good news for Celtic fans who haven't been too busy in the transfer window just yet. Whew. There we are. Rattle through it. Thanks very much indeed, gents. And plenty more on those stories as we continue our coverage of this summer window through the evening and in the morning with Good Morning Transfers, which returns tomorrow at 9 a.m. In the next couple of minutes, who has won the men's 200 metres at the Olympics? Not Noah Lyles. More details to come.